less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor. Interview.
Antonio, good morning.
Good morning.
It's bright and early today, right?
Yep, it's gonna be a hot one.
It's
Morning,
gonna be a
Antonio.
hot one. Yeah, we had some difficulties with audio and stuff yesterday, so we woke up early today to record. I appreciate you taking time to being with us and sacrificing sleep to be here. It means a lot to us.
Your guys were excited to see you show up early this morning, right?
Yeah. Typically, I don't get here till around 8 o'clock, so I do a lot of the quarterbacking from the house. Seems to go smoother that way. So
Excellent.
Good, good. Well, yeah, Martin and I are really excited. I know we got to talk a little bit yesterday about your story, and there's just so many great aspects of it. And I know there's lessons to be learned for many contractors, but um, why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about your background and who you are?
well, I was born and raised in Panama City, Panama. Um, Came up here to the U.S. to learn English and go to school. Did not intend to make a career up here. The plan was to go back to Panama, but as it often happens, the Lord has a different path for you. So ended up meeting someone and getting married and found my new home in Edmond, Oklahoma. Um, just
That's a bit different, isn't it? Like
oh
Edmond is quite different than Panama City, Panama.
absolutely. My first day here after getting off the airplane and riding to Edmond. Panama City is, even though it's a third world country, is still a metropolitan area and big buildings and traffic and lots of people. And as I was driving to my apartment complex from the airport, I thought, where in the world are we? This is like the boondocks. It's like
Yeah.
where did my parents send me? I felt like it was a punishment. So yeah, it was quite the change to see fields and cattle everywhere and not very many houses or buildings. But so yeah, quite the change. But I learned to love it, and it's become my home. So.
Wonderful. So, well, you said you were coming to learn English. Why Oklahoma?
Well, really, that was not on my. That wasn't under my control. My folks made those decisions. Oklahoma was just far enough north, away from the Hispanic population back then. I mean, and the idea was that the more immersed in the English language you can be, the quicker you're going to learn it and the better you're going to
Sure.
be. So, obviously, going to Texas or any of the southern states or Florida, where there was a lot of Hispanic culture already there, it's more difficult to learn the language.
Yeah.
So, my folks were looking for someplace farther away.
Did you go to college or just come up and work and immerse yourself in the population?
No, I went to English school first for six
Okay.
months, and then I went to college at the University of Central Oklahoma.
Okay. What'd you
Great.
major in at
Great.
UCO?
Accounting.
Ooh, my kind of guy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. So, yeah, what happened from there? So, how did you go from, not thinking you were going to be in the U.S.? You met someone, you ended up staying. What was your next thought process? Like, I'm starting my life here. What were your plans to when you were going to go back to Panama City? Was it to become an accountant?
Yes, absolutely. The whole idea for going to school here was to be bilingual. Panama City is a very bilingual city, and
Hmm.
if you want to really push forward in the corporate ladder anywhere, you have to speak English. So my parents wanted all the kids to learn English. So I came, my brother, my sister, we all came up here to go to school for that reason. And the plan was to go back and then immerse yourself in the business world down there, and you would have an advantage because you spoke English. Again, my path changed when I met Angela, my first wife, and we began dating. And at the beginning, there was no thought that I would stay here, but as this relationship got serious, and decided that we may be getting married after graduation, then obviously things had to be put into a new perspective. Will she move to Panama with me? Will I stay here? All those conversations took place, and it was the decision that we made was for us to stay here and start a family here in Edmond. So I decided to pursue my accounting career here instead, since I was not going to go back to Panama. And I began with that thought process. It did not go well. My accounting strengths were not as good as other students. So I graduated with what I thought was a great GPA. I think it was a 3.6. But all of my friends that were in my same degree were 3.9s and 4.0s, and they were getting all the job offers, and I wasn't.
Oh
I
man.
remember going to the job fairs, and one job offer I got was in Texas, and another one was in Chickasha, another one was in Ada, and my wife had a really good job, or my wife to be, I'm sorry, had a really good job here in Oklahoma City. So she was kind of dictating the fact that we were going to stay local because she had a heck of a job and was doing real well for a company called Fleming Companies that was a big food distributor back in those days. And so anyhow, so I continued looking here locally and was not having any success. And that's how I ended up at Kentucky Fried Chicken. A friend of mine, a friend of mine was a regional manager there, and he offered me a management position at one of the restaurants. And it was one of those offers like, okay, hey, take this, and if you find an accounting position elsewhere, totally understand if you want to go and move on. So he offered me the job kind of on a temporary basis, but I ended up being there for several years. So
Oh wow. So, what was your parents' response to that? That you were going to go and work at Kentucky Fried? Or is there KFC in Panama? I know they're big internationally.
oh yeah, yeah. My folks' response to that wasn't really negative or positive.
Okay.
The clash that we had was with the fact that I wasn't coming home.
Yeah.
That was really the conversation that was difficult because they did not want me to stay, particularly my mother. My dad was a little bit indifferent, but my mother really wanted me to come home, and
Yeah.
she was okay with me dating and getting married and all that, but she just wanted me to relocate and start my family in Panama. And
Yeah.
again, it didn't happen. So it took a few years for her to get over that. She kind of got a grudge about the whole thing, but
Yeah.
eventually she got over it and came up to visit quite often, and we had a really good
Good.
relationship. So
That's great. I said this on one of our last interviews that we did with Sergio Garcia, but I love the immigrant story. I think it's full of so much ambition and so many hurdles and obstacles that no one really ever has to experience. And it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, I'm going to leave my family behind and what I know behind in pursuit of something that I'm just now seeing, but I see the potential for the future.
yeah,
Um, and it's really incredible. And my father was an immigrant. A lot of my family is, and it's really cool to see that and very inspired by it. So um, you're working at KFC, and obviously doesn't have a lot to do with contracting, but at the same time, I think it might. What are some of the things that you learned at KFC? Restaurant industry is, I think, probably the hardest one to work in
absolutely.
because it's so service, so fast paced. I mean, just really difficult. What was that like for you, and what did you learn from it?
One thing that is I'm not a huge I don't do quotes really well, but there's certain things I do remember. There's a song that Garth Brooks sings that talks about thank God for unanswered prayers, and and here this is really for me. My prayer was to be an accountant. I mean, I really wanted
Mm,
that, and that those doors never opened, and like I said before, instead of trying to push something open, you want to go where the Lord leads, and it felt as if the Lord was leading to this Kentucky Fried Chicken position. I hated it. I hated the thought of it.
mm,
I it really did not enjoy the whole experience there, but it felt like this is where God wanted me, so I was going to do it.
mm.
And now looking back, this is where the thank God for unanswered prayers, because now looking back, that was a great foundation to everywhere else I've been in life.
Yeah.
Like you said about the restaurant business being one of the toughest businesses to be in. I mean,
Yeah.
you are exposed to everything. As a restaurant manager, you might as well be the owner of the restaurant minus the benefit of the salary. That's really the only
Yeah.
part that's missing. Um, you are handed the keys, and you're in charge of personnel, HR. You're the you're the facility operator. You're the operations manager. You're the CFO. You're the CEO. I mean, you name it. All the hats fall on
You
you.
have to wear them. Yeah.
So from a health department inspector coming in, from a customer unhappy that their order wasn't correct, to the roof leaking, to having an issue with employees having problems at home and bringing the problems to work with them. I mean, you name it. I was baptized into all kinds of experiences very, very quickly. So I
Yeah.
was, 21 years old, running a restaurant. I'm finding myself going, "Oh my gosh, what did I get myself into?" So,
Yeah.
so again, I did not want to be there. I'm not going to paint a pretty picture that I was like, oh, this exemplary guy, but I just kind of figure, okay, this is where the Lord has me. I'm going to do the job. I'm going to do it well. I'm going to make the bosses at KFC appreciate my work performance, even though on the inside I was still like, man, I hope that I find an accounting job. I, kept putting out applications and kept trying to turn every lead around to see if I could find something, but it never panned out. So
Yeah.
I made it there from 1991 to 1995, and then
Wow.
what moved me out of there was not accounting, but the pursuit of a whole new dream with this landscaping and contracting business.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to chat about that. And I really just want to point out, like, for any people, any listeners that are young and damn millennials, whatever people say about them, whatever, like that's us. I think there's a lot that we can learn from that story because a lot of people these days don't want to do something that they don't want to do. Like you didn't want to be a manager at KFC, and um, you pushed through it for 4+ years, and that's really hard to do something that you don't enjoy, that you don't want to do, that you didn't never intended to do for that long. But there's so much that you learned from it, and so much of that probably propelled you and pushed you to do what you wanted to do for really the rest of your life. And I think there's so much that can be learned from those experiences. So if any listeners that are out there that uh, are in something that they don't want to do, keep pushing through, keep learning from that, keep digging, because there is value in it. It's not all in vain. Now that being said, you did want to do something different, and you did wait for it, but a door opened for you, right?
Absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
so what was it that opened for you? What was it that you were passionate about this time?
Yeah. Well, during this whole time that this KFC life is going on, I have a uh, hobby that I have begun, and about the same time, the koi keeping and the fish pond hobby began in my life about 1991. It was my senior year in college when
Hmm.
I first saw a koi pond in someone's backyard, and I just was fascinated by it, and that just turned over all kinds of uh, juices inside of me that I didn't even know were there, as far as creativity and as far as desire to do outside work and garden work and landscaping. As a kid, that was not something that I had. So it was all new to me in 1991. All those feelings and all that excitement
Hmm.
and all that passion. It's like it almost felt like it'd been there all my life, but I didn't know it. It was really really
That's
odd
cool.
because it just came out and started flourishing. But again, it wasn't flourishing in a business sense. It was just a hobby, and so I began to just pursue all kinds of projects with landscaping, flower
Were you just
beds.
working on your own yard
Absolutely,
mainly?
yeah. This is my own yard. My whole my
Okay.
backyard just turned into no grass. Basically, everything became a bed or water. There was water features everywhere, landscape beds everywhere, trails, lighting. I mean, you name it. I did it to the point where my neighbors would come over and goes, "Man, you're gonna have to start landscaping my yard because you don't have any more room." So jokes like that where eventually, that would lead me to have to move, obviously, because I wanted to have more space to continue my passion. So it all began with a hobby. it began with this inner desire to really be creative and to and more than anything, the fish just fascinated me. The
Mm,
sound of water in the backyard with the trickle of the water features, that really fascinated me. So that's when I kind of began to learn that there was this passion for the outdoors that I didn't even know I had. And then I started thinking, okay, well, some people may not be able to go to the outdoors to get this. Why
right.
don't we bring the outdoors to them? Again, that took a few years to develop into that business thought. Initially, it was just a hobby.
So I know that we're gonna fill the gap in throughout this story, and I'm excited to share about it for you to share about it. But just tell us what your company is today, so we have somewhat of an idea of where we're going. Because I think it's really cool to hear this story, but I think it's even crazier to hear this story if you know where you are today as a company, um, with your company today. So go ahead and share a little bit about where you are today.
Okay, well, today the company is called Aquascape. We specialize in outdoor living, design, and construction. So basically, outdoor living encompasses just about everything outdoors, from swimming pools being probably one of our um, biggest projects that we do, but it spills into outdoor kitchens, fire pits, fireplaces, outside sitting areas like cabanas and pergola areas, and landscaping with retaining walls, sidewalks, construction of different hardscape details in the backyard. We also do some commercial work. That's not our stronghold, but we will do a few a year, mostly for uh, customers that were, friends that were customers in the residential side first, and then
Yeah.
they later have a business development that they want us to participate on. But we don't normally go out seeking commercial work, but do find ourselves doing some of it from time to time.
Yeah. Um, if you and I mean, if people want to know what your work looks like, it's incredible. Aquascapeokc.com. Check it out. It's in the show notes, but they've got some beautiful pictures of some of their projects, and it'll really take your breath away.
Yeah.
So excited to hear how we got there. So you're at KFC, you're a manager, you're probably stressed out, um, and you're getting ready to make this leap. Talk to us about that door opening and that leap that you took.
All right. So during my KFC days, there was a small little window where I felt like, well, maybe this is where God wants me for the rest of my life. In
At KFC.
At KFC,
Yeah.
so
Was that like horrifying?
it was, but after being there all these years and nothing else opening up, giving up on the accounting dream. I did have to entertain that thought. Okay, is this where the Lord
Hmm.
wants me? And there were those moments of meditation of, if this is where He wants me, then I need to be prepared that this will be my life.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things I started doing was pursuing promotion and pursuing, where how do I climb up this ladder within this company? Uh, Anyhow, that quickly got turned away when I realized that I was probably about as high as I was going to go with the company, because
Have to buy
KFC,
a franchise.
yeah, one of my mentors in the restaurant business was a manager that had been there for 20 some years. And I was at his level. I was at his level of pay and at his level of authority
Wow.
within a few years of being there. And he says, well, I've been doing this for 20 some years. I was like, and you haven't moved on? And he said, no, normally KFC, once they find a good one, they keep them, they keep you in the store. If they move you up, then they got to go find somebody to replace you. And
Oh
so
man.
they're not big fans. Very, very, and the farther up you go, the less positions there are. So
Right.
let's say there's 45 restaurant managers in our market, but there's only one supervisor for that whole area. So to get his position, you got 45 of us that are going to be trying to get it. And once that guy
Yeah.
gets that position, he's, unless he moves up to the next one, which is there's even less of them, he's going to be there for a long time. So
Yeah. No mobility.
exactly. So I quickly realized that, either I'm going to own my own restaurant in order to really move up, franchise, like Martin said, or I'm going to do something different. And being that I just said I did not like being in the restaurant business, owning a franchise or opening up my own restaurant really didn't sound that attractive. But the idea of being in business for myself did. I just, again, wasn't sure what that was going to be. And I wasn't smart enough to connect the dots that I have this passion for outdoors. Why don't I do this? Somebody had to point that out to me because I wasn't smart
Hmm.
enough to figure it out. So in 1994, I think it was, when a friend of mine had asked me if I could help him build a koi pond at his house. And
Yeah.
I remember him pleading with me, and I was like, "Man, I'm working 60-hour weeks. I don't have much time,
Gosh.
and how am I gonna go build you something? This is something I do at home for myself. Not I'm not gonna come home and then go to your house." But he was like, "Come on, just do it whenever. I don't care if it takes you 8 months. Do it on the weekends. Do it at nights. It doesn't matter. I'll help you. I just really, really want to have one of those fish ponds in my house." So we took on the challenge to help him out and built him this thing, and he loved it. In 1995, just months before I decided to quit my job, he sends my name to a friend of his and says, "Hey, I heard you build ponds. Will you build me one?" And I'm going, I don't know where this is coming from. I built him a pond, yes, but I don't build ponds. That you're kind of misinterpreting the whole deal. But he's like, "Oh, come on. I've seen the pictures. I'd really like for you to come take a look at my yard." So, and then another person called as a result of that. So all of a sudden, I'm getting people calling me for ponds and landscapes, and I haven't even said that I'm in business to do this. So
Yeah.
as the months progressed, frustrations were still rising in the KFC business, um, with different things that were going on, and then in the meantime, this is happening over here. And finally, my friend, the first friend that I built the pond for, came over to the house one day, and we were visiting about some of my frustrations with my restaurant job, and he said, "Why don't you just do this for a living? Like, why don't you just quit and do this?" And that, really is, that was like ding ding ding, like, wait a minute, I do
You
love.
really hadn't thought about it until that point?
Exactly. It was, even with people
Wow.
calling me, it just was not one of the things. Again, I think, I'll repeat this since this was said yesterday. The person that I was working for at KFC was a friend, so there
Yeah.
was also a loyalty factor involved
Mm,
of me. Just,
sure.
he gave me a chance when I couldn't find the job that I wanted, and so I would have to make that phone call to say, "Hey, I'm leaving." So I mean, there were some other factors going on, but definitely I had not made the connection on my own about, I can do this for a living. So my friend was a very exciting kind of guy, very passionate. So he would like, "Come on, Antonio, you can do this. Come on, man, I'll help you get it going. We'll get some business cards printed, and we'll, pass out some flyers." And he's one of those motivator guys. He could be a motivational speaker. And so with his nudging and the fact that I had a few people that wanted ponds, I was able to build up the courage to go up to my boss in April of '95, which is when it all began, and say, "Hey, I'm gonna give you my 2 or 3 or 4 weeks notice, however much time you need to get somebody in the store to take my place, but I'm gonna pursue this landscaping dream." Now, my boss and I talked a lot, so he knew my passion. And his words to me when I said that were, "I was wondering how long it was gonna take before you said this." So he knew it was
He knew
coming.
he knew it.
He knew it
Yeah,
was
the writing was
coming.
on the wall.
Yeah, and yet I didn't know it. So
It's kind of
anyhow,
funny how people realize about us sometimes long before we do for
yeah.
ourselves.
So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wow. So did your friend go into business with you? I mean,
No,
was
no,
it just, okay, I'm going to be a sole proprietor for a while? What was the step to fully be out of it? You're out of KFC. Did you start Aquascape at that time? What was the name of what you were doing?
no. At the time, my friend was just a motivator, a helper. He had his own business. He actually owned a window tinting business. So this was just all me. Uh, we did not know what we were going to name it. For the first couple of months, the company did not have a name. It was Antonio. And just call Antonio if you want a pawn or something. And then I decided that since I was building decorative water features or decorative ponds, I decided that the name of the company was going to be Decorative Water Gardens. And, here's our original business card logo that we had created for Decorative Water Gardens. And
Wow.
we began with that. Again, there were a lot of things we did besides water gardens, but that was
Hmm.
our focus. It was the water features. That was the passion. That's what inspired me to quit my job and do this. So we began with that. But the reality of it was that it was not going to pay the bills right off the bat. There wasn't enough people lining up to order a water garden for me to be able to make a living and even get to where I was at KFC. Because at first I'm going, okay, can I at least um, get my income back where it was? So I quickly realized that one of the easiest ways to get a cash flow coming in the landscaping industry is to mow yards. So
Mm.
I began taking on lawns, so that I would have that weekly income, that cash flow, and then I could work in the water garden jobs and the landscape jobs in between the weekly services. So
Yeah.
I went out and bought me a trailer and bought me some lawnmowers, and I started passing out flyers in my neighborhood. My first lawns were my neighbors that didn't want to mow
Yeah.
didn't want to mow their own lawn. So I already knew which people didn't like mowing. So I targeted them, and so I had several yards in my own neighborhood. I actually landed my first commercial account because my neighborhood association hired me to mow the common grounds. It began.
Great.
It's just spread from there. A lot of flyers, a lot of walking around neighborhoods, putting flyers in people's doors, and through word of mouth, I built a pretty good mowing business. And then being in people's yards, it was a great door opener for selling them a
Yeah.
water feature. Because since I
Yeah.
was there already mowing their yard, then I would say, hey, what would look great back here? A little water garden would look really good there. So that kind of worked hand in hand with the growth of the water garden business and the landscape business. Um, I wanted to.
So
Go
let's
ahead.
talk about that. You that's your first really sales experience, because at KFC people are just coming to you. You're not really having to doing a lot of selling. Um, but that's your first sales experience, right? Where you're having to go and, you know, knock on doors, ask for, say, hand out flyers, all
Yes.
those things. What was the hardest thing about that? For, because I think a lot of contractors get into it for, like you, they're gonna go and they're gonna build ponds and they're gonna mow lawns at the beginning, but they don't realize they have to go and sell. What was, I think it was easier for you because you knew who you were targeting, and I think that's a big thing to remember. But what was that like?
Well, it was a little intimidating.
Right.
I still to this day don't think of myself as a great salesman.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just gonna facilitate people, help them get what they want. And so my idea was to just kind of open the door, throw the
Yeah.
thought out there. Hey, you may need this. You may, and then kind of take it from there. But I never had developed that pushy sales kind of strategy thing within my
Well, good.
personality.
You
Hey,
shouldn't.
Antonio,
Yeah,
we just can't let that go by without passing
No, we
some
can't.
great wisdom in that because if I were to write a definition of a good salesman, it would be someone who helps his customers or clients get what they want.
yeah,
That's exactly
Seriously.
it. Yeah.
Well, there's even the way that you probably don't realize it, but you're prospecting. You targeted people that you saw didn't like to mow their lawn.
hmm
Like, just
You
the
solve their
fact that
problem.
you saw the problem, and then you went and you said, okay, I'm going to go to that person and say, hey, I'll mow your lawn for you so you don't have to. And then when you were there, you were saying, hey, the way you know that you could enjoy this more if you had a koi pond. You know that we do that. I mean, you're educating them on something that would make their experience better. And that's what a good salesman does. It's not about being pushy or forcing a quote on somebody, but finding a need
yeah.
and seeing something that is missing and offering a solution to that problem. And I think you did an excellent job of that. And probably you don't realize you're probably the best salesman there is, and probably a favorite salesman in many people's eyes because of how you handled that.
Well,
So I think there's a lot to take from that.
one other thing to add is as you build a relationship, which is very
Hmm.
very important part of this whole strategy is to get to know your customers, and and talk to them outside of just the particular need, because as
Hmm.
I would get to know them, I would find out a lot of them would say, "Oh, we don't spend much time outside. So, like, I don't want to
Hmm.
do anything to my yard, just mow it. We don't spend much time outside." And then I would
Yeah.
say, "Well, why don't you spend much time?" They say, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
if I had your yard, again, a lot of these were neighbors, so that's where it began. So
Sure.
they knew what my yard looked like. So they would, if I had your yard, I wouldn't go inside." And I go, "Well, that's the point. So if you wouldn't go inside if you have my yard, then why don't we have my yard at your yard? Maybe not to that extent, but let's do something that would draw you outside. Do you like the idea of being outside?" And then they would start thinking through it and go, "Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it would be fun to be outside if I had a little water garden to look at, or to,
Yeah.
so just kind of sometimes helping them discover that, yes, you're only inside because your yard is boring. Yeah, I would be inside too. But if you put something exciting out here, then that'll draw you out. So a lot of that, but I don't want to close this segment without saying it was not easy. I mean,
Sure.
a lot of days, I remember this vividly, like it happened yesterday. I would walk around the neighborhoods in my area. I would walk, 2 or 3 miles circles around my neighborhoods and hit all their additions and put flyers on people's doors. And then I would
Yeah.
walk back to my house and I would sit by the phone and I would just literally stare at the phone waiting for it to ring. And my wife would come home from work and see, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I just passed, flyers for the last 3 hours. So I'm waiting to see who's gonna call." And sometimes it was devastating because the evening would go by and not a single phone call. And
Yeah.
you would think, "Oh my gosh, I just wasted all that paper, I wasted all that energy, and nobody called." I
Yeah.
wonder how many people grabbed the flyers and threw them in the trash can, And the percentages of direct marketing, I found out later, are very, very low, and
Right.
that includes flyers.
For this business.
Yeah, but we did. One person would call or two people would call eventually as the days went on, and so I never stopped that flyering for quite some time because did pick up a few accounts over time.
Hmm.
But yeah, it wasn't easy to get it going. In fact,
Yeah.
yesterday, I don't know how much of yesterday's you're gonna play on, but I said that I had to go get my job back at KFC that first winter.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's a reminder that it wasn't easy that first year. That it wasn't. We can look back now and see our success, but definitely had some trials to go with it. So
Yeah, because you said it would start getting slow in the winter that first year, and you had to go back and get a job to get money, right?
exactly, yeah, because that's
And but it's something you said yesterday was that because you had such a good relationship and you didn't leave that job in a bad situation and you didn't burn any bridges, you were able to come back on that temporary basis, right?
yes, yes.
Good. And when you left KFC that last time, right after the temporary job, was that like, did you know that was the final, like that was the last time you were going back? Do you feel good about that?
I actually did not.
Oh wow.
Whenever I left that on that second stint, and thank my boss for giving me the chance. Actually, the conversation was more like, "Well, no problem. If you need to come back again, doors are always open. Let me know." He and I continue to be friends. So he would tell me later that he was hoping that I would have called him back that next winter, or it's like I
Yeah.
didn't want you to fail, but at the same time I was wanting you back. So it was kind of
Sure.
a real sticky situation for him. But no, I was not sure. After I went
Yeah.
back to work in 1996 and got more jobs and got more mowing accounts, that year I was able to get some commercial mowing accounts. And the commercial accounts, you normally divide the payments over 12 months. So I was
Ah.
able to get myself some winter income coming in.
Yeah.
So in 1996, the idea was that, if things don't get busy enough, I can always go back to KFC one more time and go work there another winter. But fortunately, it wasn't needed. So
Yeah. Well, we're going to ask you some more specific questions about your business back then, and it's probably going to require you to reach back into the depths of your memory. But we talked a little bit about how you were marketing. You're doing more flyers, direct marketing at that
mhm.
time, and then just a lot of word of mouth referrals. But how did you keep track of things? How did you keep track of customers' info, of materials? You're doing all this in your garage, I'm assuming. What
Yeah.
was that like? And how are you keeping track, staying organized?
My wife was a big helper. She, even though she had a full time job, she was my uh, what do you want to call it? Office manager or
Yeah.
marketing helper. I mean, phone helper. I mean, she really, and she had an accounting background too. She had a business background, so
Okay.
she had a lot of business savvy and was very able to be a great backup support for all of that organizational things that you're talking about. So I think it would have been very chaotic if I was doing it all by myself. So having my wife support and just being there for me was huge. So
Wow. So you don't even remember how you kept track of things. It was mainly her.
absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. What about like, when you're pricing jobs, how are you doing these quotes? What were you putting in margin? I mean, obviously you had an accounting background, so you knew a little bit of that. That's important, probably more than most contractors that start out. But yeah,
Yeah.
what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, because of my Kentucky Fried Chicken experience, I knew about margins. I knew that we have
Hmm.
labor costs, we have food costs, we have fixed costs that in the restaurant, and so we knew what we had to sell the food for in order to be able to still make a profit. And they were very they were very picky about that because I had checkups on my books every so
Yeah.
often, and they, hey Antonio, your food cost is up. What's going on? You're cooking too much and throwing too much away at the end of the shift, or your labor cost is high. Why are you got too many employees on the shift? And so I knew enough business, and from my accounting degree as well, I knew that you have to have a margin. So I began with a pretty good basis. Again, my wife was an accountant herself, so there's a lot of issues with contractors today probably not having that on the wraps
Yeah.
doing things incorrectly. But fortunately, that was not a challenge for me from day one because I had a good business background as I went into the contracting business. So I knew quite well. Now, my issue there was then what does the market bear? Because since I was
Hmm.
new in this industry and I went to mow a yard and I'm $50 to mow it, and they say, well, somebody else is mowing it for 45. I did have to do some adjusting and tweaking and figuring out, well, I'd really like to make this, but
Right.
I need the lawn to mow right now.
Hmm.
I know this in today's world. Martin and I have had conversations about, no, you have your price and you stick with your price, but I think sometimes that's different when you're trying to get going. And
Yeah.
if I say, I need to have lawns to fill out the week, and I'm going to give up $5 on this lawn to get there, then so be it. Um,
Right.
Maybe after I mow it for 6 months and they see how great a job I do, I'll be able to get my $5 back. And
Right.
oftentimes I did that. I say, hey, I'll start it with this, and you're going to see that I'm going to do a better job than the guy that was doing it before. And then you're going to want to pay me what I bid to you to begin with. So I would go back and ask, hey, do I deserve to get the extra $5 or whatever? And customers would say, oh, absolutely. Now if you're doing a
Yeah.
terrible job, then yeah, don't even go
Right.
ask. So,
Antonio, that's
Yeah.
a hugely important thing that everybody listening is either going through now or has gone through now. It's when you cut your prices to get to work and transition to where you can actually make money and survive. And just because that's what we're talking about right now, I like to say to people, make sure you give them a reason other than price to buy from you.
Hmm.
yeah,
And sometimes you have to prove it first. But
Right.
anyway,
yeah.
just more wisdom.
No, that's great. That's great. So, you were making a profit, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was making a
Good.
profit. Now, again,
Okay, wait. Absolutely, I was making a profit. I mean, that's a key point for people.
yeah,
Is a lot of people go out and do it to get the sale and not to make the profit. But I just want to didn't want to let that pass.
yeah.
Absolutely, you were making a profit.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, and I love what I was doing. I was very thankful that the Lord opened up these doors and this opportunity was there. But I still, if I wanted to do it for a hobby and for fun, I would not have started a business. So
Yeah.
a profit was a necessity of this endeavor. And I want to add another thing to you guys is to the listeners here, my wife that year gave me the news in 1995. I'm backtracking, that she was pregnant. This is
Oh,
after.
so during all this, wow.
Yeah, this is after I had quit my job. She actually knew, she was pregnant, but she didn't tell me so
Oh
that I
man.
would not change my decision. She knew I wanted to do
Wow.
this, and I was hesitating and conflicting within my soul on the prospect of walking up to my boss and quitting. And she said, if I told you that I was pregnant, you probably would not have done it. She kept it quiet, and she didn't let me know. I mean, probably till the moment where I probably would have found out on my own. Hey, wait a minute, what's wrong with your belly? But
Yeah.
she finally told me where I was already, head in and all the way to my knees into the water. So it's like, okay, you can't go back now. So in 1996, when we were getting the second round of business after I left KFC, my daughter's born. And
Wow.
talking about this profit thing, hey, I'm being the sustainer for my family. This is a
Hmm.
business, and it has to be for profit. So yeah, we're,
Absolutely.
we're not going out there to just work just to work. So
Man. Well, um, I think this is a really fascinating story, and we're not even halfway, honestly. So the last question that I have for before we get into how things started changing, I want to know, who was your first hire? How did you make that decision? Talk to us about like how you start, because I know employees were a very, very key as you started to make a transition.
yeah.
You had mentioned yesterday. What, who did you hire? How did you hire them? How did you find them? How did
Well,
you manage them?
so networking with my KFC buddies was the start of that.
Yeah.
No full-time employees, because I did not want to obviously have any conflict with my employer. But what I did is I had made some friendships with other restaurant managers in the area, particularly the manager of the Edmond store. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, if you have any workers that would like some extra hours, again, not taking away from the shifts that you have in working, but if they want to work some extra hours, I could use some help certain days of the week, digging a hole for a pond,
Yeah.
etc., or mowing a yard. I also reached out to the person that took over my job at my restaurant in Bethany, and he was an assistant manager under me, so he got promoted when I left, and asked him the same thing. So throughout just those first few months, when I needed helpers, no full time employees, just when I needed helpers, I would just get them from my KFC um,
Yeah.
friends. So really, the KFC helped in a way get this business
Sure.
started. Then in 1996, after my daughter was born, um, I remember being in church and having a prayer request moment and praise moment. There was a lot to be thankful for, and a lot of prayer requests being shared. But one in particular that I shared at that time in the beginning of 96 was, I do need to probably hire somebody that's more consistent, that
Yeah.
maybe still not full time, but somebody that I can count on every week to be here, as opposed to, one week two guys, the next week two different guys, the next week another guy. It was hard to build some kind of rapport with your guys when they're changing every week. It's almost like I was using a temp service per se.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so when I did that prayer request, class was over, and somebody taps me in the shoulder from behind the row behind me and said, "Hey, uh, I could help you." Um,
Really?
yes, and I said, "Huh? Well, what are you doing?" I
Tap
said, "What are
tap
you doing
tap.
now?" What are you doing now? Well, I drive a school bus. I'm still going to school, but I drive a school bus route in the mornings early, and then in the afternoons to pick up the kids. But in between, I could help you, and I could help you every week.
Wow.
And
Exactly what you were looking for.
exactly. So it's like, again,
That's
the
really
the, the
cool.
prayer got answered immediately, and I'm proud to say that that guy that tapped me in the shoulder is still with me today. So.
Wow.
Um,
What's his role now?
he is. Martin's gonna laugh at this. He's our service manager, but when Martin and I did our consulting, we have decided that he was going to become an operations manager. But we first had to find a replacement for him,
Right.
and unfortunately, here we are on year 3 of trying to find a replacement for him, and that has not happened yet. So this is another one of those trial moments where we say
Yeah,
it's not our time, it is God's time. And Jeff and I have
that's
had
good.
conversations about, we know what we want to do, but we're going to do it when the Lord opens the door. And for
Right.
whatever reason, that door has not opened where he can step into that operations manager role. So in the time being, I'm still being the operations manager. But I still have faith and believe that the Lord's going to open that door. But we have not found someone to replace Jeff. So anyhow, we're getting ahead of
No,
ourselves.
that's good.
But back to the question, yes, he was the one that tapped me in the shoulder. He began helping me in 1996, and I had my first consistent employee that was to count on every week for different projects. So
Wow, that's great. And I think that's a huge help. I think it's one of the most difficult things is when you're by yourself, whenever you're so used to running every aspect of your business, bringing in that first key employee can be a big challenge, just from selecting and trusting and all those things. But it really does shift the trajectory of your business, of what you're able to do. And you have to learn more about yourself in that process, about what you're learning to have to let go of things and how to move forward. And you already had experience with delegating at KFC, I'm sure.
yes,
But when it's your own business, it's a little bit different. And things are closer to home. So um, let's transition and really talk about the big change. You guys were doing landscaping and water gardens, um, but things changed and you guys went in a different direction. But before that happened, there was a big life event that happened. So share with our listeners, 1999, what you find out.
yeah. Well, and even before 1999, I want to talk to you about another life event. uh, one thing that is important to remember is every journey is going to have bumps.
Hmm.
The journey, you look back and you can see, okay, yeah, we had some great times, but you have to remember that there are difficult times, and to try and paint a picture that everything's going to be hunky dory is just not realistic. And is you got to be expecting those tough times, and you just got to be have a resolve that you're going to get through them, and with God's help, you can get through them. So one of our first bumps was in 1996 after my daughter was born. My wife's maternity leave comes to an end, and she tells me that she's not going back to work. Uh,
Ah,
at the time, that was a huge bombshell. I mean, that was like, what are you saying? Are you insane? I mean, we're barely into this first year of our business, and we need your income. Again, I'm short sighted. I'm not seeing the overall picture. I'm not letting my faith lead me. I am just kind of in the moment, and the emotions. It's like,
yeah,
wait a minute, we have to have your income. And my wife's wisdom, which was way greater than mine, she said, no, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I feel that this is what God's calling me to do, and I'm
mm,
willing to give up my career and my job to follow where God is leading me, and He wants me to stay home with my daughter. So again, once I was able to accept that, there was some bitterness there for a while, but once I was able to accept that, I thought, I have got to really get this business doing way better this year than it did before, because my wife's not going back to work. We're not going to have her income to back us up. So that was the first bump in the road. Uh, God answered prayers just absolutely amazingly, well beyond my expectations. To where in '96,
always
we did not miss our income. Number one, number two, I didn't have to go back to KFC that second winter. So
good.
so God was there uh, all around. So
And
then,
I think sometimes it requires that of us. Like God will never ask us to do anything or require more of us than we're capable of doing. But I think also you can't. Sometimes you need those situations to really push you, to be uncomfortable. Like you have to be uncomfortable to be able to grow.
yeah,
There's no growth without discomfort. Um, and I think because of that situation, we have no idea what it would have been like if she would have gone back to work. But I know that you probably had to work much harder and more diligently with those expectations placed on you.
yes,
And I think everyone's experienced that. Everyone has those moments that they're like, man, I am being pushed to the breaking point at some times, and I don't know how I'm going to make it, but they end up coming through. And I think God is faithful. And I think also discomfort can breed growth. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. So continue. So
So
you're the sole breadwinner,
yes,
and
yeah.
what happens?
So I mean, 1997 is a great year, stellar year, just family wise and business wise. Everything's going great. Just loving my new baby and just having a great time. Having some adding some employees to the company. Jeff's taking now a full time role in the business. He's no longer doing the school bus thing. He's made a commitment that he wanted to work with me full time. So 97 is a great year. 1998, we're experiencing more growth. The business is just going absolutely fantastic. In 1998, I bring in my second full-time employee, uh, which was my brother-in-law, my sister's husband. They moved.
Oh, wow.
They picked up their family and moved from Florida to Oklahoma for him to come work for me. And at the time, I did not know it, but at the time, he was just going to be another helper. He later became my right hand man and just
Mm,
pretty much ran everything in the business in my absence. And so, again, 98 was full of blessings, full of growth. 1999, though, is where another bombshell hits. So
yeah.
again, you have
More than just a bump.
yeah. So you have the good years that you can look back on, and then you also have the tough years. And in 1999, my wife got diagnosed with breast cancer. Um, so another time to sit back and reflect and try to pray for wisdom and just pray for understanding and peace
Mm,
because our flesh does not allow us sometimes that, and the enemy is always throwing curveballs at us to derail us.
yeah.
And so a lot of thoughts. Why me? Why her? Why us? We have a young baby. We have a small business just getting started. We can't deal with this. Why are you doing this to us, God?
Hmm.
So a lot of those moments, a lot of those thoughts, go through your head. But again, through the help of a great church body from our Sunday school class and from our church friends, we had just unbelievable support, an unbelievable outpour of love, and then also seeing the bigger picture of why did my sister and her husband move from Florida to Oklahoma? Was it really for him to come work for me, or was it because I needed family here nearby to
Mm,
endure 1999?
yeah.
And not only having my sister here, which would have been my only other family member, but also having nephews and nieces that are the same age of my daughter
Mhm.
that are now
Yeah.
going to be hanging out together while mom and dad are dealing with hospital issues. So, again, I would love to say that I knew that then. I didn't see it then. I
Sure.
experienced it, but I didn't see it. It was years later that you reflect back and go, that is, God's in control right there at its best.
Hmm.
For because I always question, why would my sister lived in Miami, Florida. That's a long ways to go work for a landscape company that's just barely getting started and have no idea what the future holds. And you guys picked up your three kids and moved halfway across the country. And but then I was able to see the bigger picture that it wasn't so much so that Eric could work for me, but it was more so that the family could be together. And
Wow.
so we endured 1999 with ups and downs. There were joyful moments throughout the journey. There were terrible, terrible valleys, and just being in the bottom of a pit where you just scream that just how do I get out of here?
My me. Yeah.
Um, and so we just went through that roller coaster through the 99. And again, we learned to just understand what the church family is all about. I mean, oh my gosh, if
Mm.
anyone ever says I don't need church, um, you cannot be farthest from the truth, because the church body is there to uplift and support each other. Yes, you can have a relationship with God, and yes, you can pray on your own, you can read the Bible on your own, but the church body is just a great motivator and uplifter, prayer partners. they suffer with you, they cry with you, they rejoice with you. I mean, it's just an amazing appreciation that I was able to gain for the church in 1999 that I did not have before.
Wow.
And that continued to grow in my life because unfortunately the story didn't end with the good ending from a world perspective, because my wife ended up passing away in January 2nd of 2000. And
Wow.
so we lost the battle. We lost the battle on earthly terms, but ultimately it's still a victory because she's in heaven and she is
Yeah.
with the Lord, where is where we're all going to be. If you're a Christian, that's where we're all aiming to be at, and
Yeah.
that's our destination. She just got there sooner than I wanted her to. We
Yeah.
definitely grieve and are in pain and suffer that, but we're also rejoiced with the fact that hey, she finished her journey, and she did it very well while she was here. She ran a very good race, and she's there. And we'll get there all at our timing that the Lord has for us. So having had the opportunity to see what 20 years pass by, all of that wisdom comes in due time. Yes, I could tell you that it would have been better if I had all that at the time that it happened. No, there was a lot of tears, and there was a lot of bitterness, and there was a lot of fighting God and asking why. But again, through just his enormous love for us, and through the friendship of other believers, we were able to push through and get over to the other side. So,
Hmm.
um,
That's power.
And you said, yeah, I'm sorry about that, but I know that it's been a while now, and it sounds like you've had a really great time of reflection and learning and peace with it as well. Um, and I know that yesterday when we were speaking about this, you had mentioned that how, you already talked about how helpful it was for your brother-in-law and your sister to be around and to have family and to have the church body. But I think specifically those employees, Jeff and your brother-in-law, were very key to you getting through that in 2000. Because, I mean, obviously, I would not be in a good place if my wife had just passed and was
yes.
dealing with cancer. But yeah, they were able to take everything onto their plate and run things, right.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many stories within the story that I think we could talk for 8 hours. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But yes, I mean, on the personal side, the support was immense. But also in the business side, those two guys, it's just like wow. I mean, how blessed can I be that to have two people that walk up to me and say, "Hey, we got it. No,
Yeah.
no worries, we got it." And they did. I mean, they stepped up to the plate, and it was so liberating for me to just know that hey, as I'm dealing with this family crisis, I don't have to worry about the business collapsing. Honestly, I probably didn't care. I
Yeah.
was at a mental place where I thought, if the business collapses, so be it. I'll have to start over, whatever, because that wasn't important to me at the time. but
Right.
but having those guys to say, we're going to take control, we're going to take the reins, and we're going to push this forward, was an enormous blessing. And whenever I was able to return in the spring of 2000, then the business was there for it to just continue moving
Yeah.
forward. So
Well, I think that's a big point for anybody. Like you can never predict what's going to happen. And we act like we assume we know that there's been bumps in the road in the past, but we assume that we're on kind of a linear track, that things are just going to go smooth, and we have these 5-year plans that are going to pan out. But we know that there will be bumps in the road moving forward too. We have to understand that, and it's so important to find good employees, to have systems and processes, to be able to delegate and pull yourself out. Because when tragedy strikes, when things that you don't expect happen, you have to have those people around and those systems around to be able to get through those moments. And so it's important to work on your business.
mhm.
But yeah, I want to talk about pools now, um,
Yeah.
because up until this point, your aquascape and you do pools primarily now, but still hasn't been introduced into the business model. So tell us about the first time you heard about pools.
Well, in the year 2000, whenever that whole thing was going on with the after my wife passed away, I finished up a landscaping job that year for a customer that had been very involved with us as far as on the family side of things, helping with meals and helping with prayer and visitation and whatnot. Uh, but she was also a customer, and as we finished out the job, and we found out a few months later that they were moving to another house, and they reached out to me and asked if I would build them a pool. And that's the first time.
Why did they do that? I mean,
I still, honestly, I still do not know the answer to that question, other than to tell you that that was God's way of opening that door. I
yeah.
don't know, because it is not rational for a
Hmm.
person to ask someone that doesn't do something to to build them a pool. I mean, so it'd be like me calling you, Khalil, right now and say, "Hey, man, I want you to sculpt me a eagle out of a piece of wood." And you're you're not a sculptor, so you're
Sure.
gonna probably look at me and go, are you out of your mind? I don't know, maybe that's too extreme of an example.
The
You know,
But
I
the
the
just
point,
only thing I can think of is you built them a pond before this at their old house.
yes, I built them a pond and
The,
I done some landscaping for them and I mow their yards and so all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
so you must have built that pond so good they wanted to swim in it.
well,
That- that's
and
that's a
just
very
in listening to this remarkable story, Antonio, of course, the reason they chose you is they chose your character and your passion. And
Yeah.
they knew even before you that that would translate into a magnificent pool. But yeah, this is quite a story.
Yeah, Antonio, I think you had said yesterday that they said they love their pond so much they wish they could have you build their pool to look as beautiful as their pond, right?
yes, yes, and that was a motivator factor for them to get that nature-like feel of a pool. And again, I fought it off with the idea of, well, I don't build pools. So
Yeah.
we went on a little bit of a back and forth journey there for a few weeks of me saying no, I really don't feel capable or don't feel right about doing this.
Yeah.
Um, they eventually kind of quiet down and went away. I thought that it was over.
Uh-huh.
They were busy with their move and getting their new house going, so it kind of got put on pause. In the meantime, that same year, I decided to move to a new house, and I was going to build myself a pool. And again, a little bit different because doing it for yourself is not the same as doing it for someone else. But as I began those plans and began that process, word got out, and so this client heard that I was going to be building myself a pool, and they reached back out to me a second time and said, "Hey, wait a minute, you said you wouldn't do this for us, but yet you're building yourself a pool." And so we had to go through that process again of negotiating this whole perspective, but eventually they convinced me to build them a pool.
Wow. Yeah, that's a little nerve wracking, I bet, because I don't know. Like I get like a pond, like you're not gonna swim in it. There's not like health concerns really. I mean, I'm sure there probably could be if you did a really poor job or didn't take care of it, and someone fell in. But with a pool, I feel like there's more like liability there. Were you scared to do it for them?
At the time, geez, I mean, I was probably what, in my mid 20s, somewhere about, no, 28, 29. So I had a lot more, I had a lot more, I don't know what the word is. I'm
You were
sorry.
willing to take more risks.
Yes, the risk factor for me, like, hey, I even jumped out of an airplane back then. I wouldn't do that now, But yes, I was willing to take more risks, and the challenges that were presented to me sometimes would outdo my fears. Just the idea of completing that challenge or rising up to a challenge. Yes, there would be fear. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but the excitement of the challenge would normally surpass that fear, so I would go ahead and give it a try anyway. Now, I did have help. I mean, so surrounding yourself by people that are smarter than you is always a good thing.
Hmm.
The other day you asked me about a quote of the day. I was kind of thinking of a couple of things overnight, and that's one of them. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I mean, you
Mm.
don't have to know it all. You just have to know where to get the answers. And that's a huge lesson for anyone in business, that you're going to be presented with challenges that you're not capable of solving on your own. But you have business acquaintances, you have friends, you have people that you can use as resources to find the answers, to make sure that you do it correctly. um, and another thing is, when you make a mistake, you own up to it and learn from it. There's going to be lots of mistakes along the journey, and the worst thing you can do is to blame somebody else, or blame a circumstance. Just own it and say, hey, I screwed up, and I'm going to learn from this, so that next time I won't make that same mistake. So yes, there were definitely challenges, there was definitely fear, but I put myself around people that had some resources that I could use to make sure that I gave this client a worthy pool. I wasn't gonna just take the job and go do a subpar job with it. So there was a lot of research done. There was a lot of time spent reading, and a lot of time spent talking to people before we went out there and dug that hole.
Yeah.
So
So that was your first pool. How quickly did you get your next one?
the pool wasn't even finished when she had already referred me to someone else.
She didn't
So
even know she could swim in it, and she told people, "You got to use this guy."
she was getting her hair done, and her hairdresser lady was talking to her, and they started chatting about the fact that she was having a pool put in. And the lady that was in the stall next to her, this is pre-coronavirus, by the way. You could be closer than 6 foot, I guess, and listen to each other's conversations. So the lady that was next to her approached her afterwards, like, "Hey, I want to get a pool built, and you were just talking about this person doing yours." And so she gave her my name. So yes, I got my second lead while my
before
first
you
pool was
finished.
still not finished. And of course,
Wow.
I was building my own at my house. So within the first few months of this endeavor, I had 3 pools under my belt. So
Wow.
I set out to build me a pool personally, and the next thing I know, I have 3 pools, and that was really kind of the platform that began the whole thing. Because from there, I got another referral and another referral, and to
Just
close
kept
that,
building.
yeah, it kept building. Yeah.
So how did it, when, at what point did you change your name? Was that years later? Was that at that time? Because you water gardens, decorated water gardens didn't make sense.
Yes, it was about a year and a half later. So this whole thing began in 2001. It wasn't until the end of 2002 that we came up with Aquascape pools. So for a good year and a half, we built pools under decorative water gardens. So it was just
Right.
another service of decorative water gardens was swimming pools.
Yeah.
And In 2002, we decided that it may be less confusing to customers that were seeking pool help. So
Right.
we opened up a second company. So Decorative Water Gardens stayed in the mix, stayed in the business, but then Aquascape Pools began just to take care of our pool costs.
Yeah.
Hey, Antonio,
So,
real quickly
oh,
before
go
we
ahead.
get past that, you haven't built a pool yet, and all of a sudden you've got 3 more. And when you went through those, did you have any major stumbling blocks, any major learning curves? And if so, or if not, why not? I mean, were you there every day, or did they
Oh,
work out pretty well?
no. Yeah, again, tons of learning curves. I mean, yes. I mean, we felt like those first three had enormous challenges because it was all new to us.
Hmm.
So every single day it was a learning experience. Every single time I turned my head a different direction, I was learning something new. So yes, there were a lot of stumbling blocks. There was a lot of things that require extra effort. But again, the more we did it, the easier it became. But again, stressing a point here is that we sought after people that knew more than we did. So we were not
Yeah.
going to try to just go out there and engineer this on our own without proper help. So we always try to surround ourselves with people that knew more than we did as we got past those stumbling blocks. Um,
Yeah.
as the years went on, experience, they say that the university, Hard Knocks University, is the best university. I mean, experience teaches you a lot. So
Yeah.
obviously, the more pools we did, the easier it became.
And you
So
spend a lot of personal time at the jobs during that personal
Yes,
responsibility. Yeah.
yes.
now,
Sorry, but the reason I bring that up is I think I know of clients and other companies that get started and then they have the opportunity to get a large number of work and something new. And I frequently discourage them from taking on 20 pools before they've done one. And
Hmm.
that's why just the
Yeah,
it
learning
requires
curve.
all their time.
yeah. Our growth was slow. It wasn't exponential, so that's good. We didn't find ourselves in that scenario where all of a sudden we had 20 pools. We did get there, but we got there at a good pace, so that
Yeah.
we were able to keep it managed. I think 2005 was really the year where things kind of started exploding, and by then we had three and a half years under our belt, so we felt ready for that explosion.
Right.
So
That's good. Now, really quick, I mean, yeah, you started your landscaping and your pricing was, you know, kind of what the market would bear, but also what you thought you were worth. You had built-in profit margins from the get-go because of your experience at KFC. But whenever you got into pools, I mean, that's a completely different purchase price than a pond, I would imagine, right? They're not even close in price, are they?
no, no, the numbers are totally different, completely different areas. I mean, ponds typically you can do in the $10,000 to $20,000 range. Pools you're talking about 60, 70, up to 100. So completely different.
So how did you make, I mean, did you just keep this, how did you, you know, it's hard to just price something that much larger when you've never done it before. What was that like for you?
Well, the principle doesn't change. I mean, if you have a margin, if you're working for a margin, whether you're going to price a job that's $10 or a job that is $100 or $10,000, if you have your margin and that's what you are wanting to make for your profit, then the numbers take care of themselves after
Yeah.
that. So I think the biggest thing to learn there is, what is your margin? What do you want to do? And then you stick with that. My difficulty was not that part. My difficulty was just knowing what things cost, because it was a whole new set of circumstances for us. So understanding the time that it takes to put in plumbing on a pool, understanding the time that it takes to do rebar, understanding the time that it takes to clean up a yard after the job is finished, all of those numbers before you can add your margin to it had to be understood and had to be deciphered. And we
Hmm.
did have a lot of challenges and a lot of struggles there, because I missed some
Yeah.
quite often, where I would think, well, we should be able to get that done in 3 days, and it took 4 or 5. And then you are there scratching your head going, well, what went wrong? And circumstances change from pool to pool. That's another learning curve. Some pools,
Yeah.
the ground cooperates and the guys can get in and out quicker when they're doing the plumbing. And then the next pool, the ground is like digging through concrete, and you put the shovel in the ground and it just bounces back on your hand, and you realize, wait a minute, this one's going to take longer. So sometimes whenever you did the numbers at the end of the day, uh, the profit was not what we wanted it to be. But I
Yeah.
have I have learned early on in the career. I also learned that you can't have every day be profitable. Our goal is to be profitable at the end of the year. So I'm not going to sit there and look at my books daily and scratch my head. Something went a little long. Yes, it took, but tomorrow may go a little bit faster and we recover. So as long as at the end of the year your profit margin is where it needs to be, then you're doing the right thing. If you're
Yeah.
getting to the end of the year and you're losing money, then you better start changing some things for the next year. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, so our margin again was achievable for most part. We did have some scenarios where we lost some money that wasn't I wasn't prepared, but I believe that in any new business venture you're gonna have some
It's
other
gonna happen.
bumps. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I think it's really important what you said, that even though the job numbers changed and they were so much higher, the principle stayed the same. And I think for so many contractors, they see these bigger opportunities and they forget that principle, and they see the number and they're like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, that's an amazing job. That'll feed us for, the next 3 months or whatever it is. And you got to keep that principle staying the same, because otherwise you're going to lose all your profit. You're going to be more stressed out. You're going to be in a hole, all these different things.
Well, I think,
Yeah.
Antonio, this is something I realized the first day I met Antonio and I saw his books. Uh, One of the critical things, and we're just passing through as if everybody knows this, but vast or a large majority of contractors don't have good books, in my experience. So the ideas of cost and margins, and what you've said just in passing, if your margins are where they need to be, well, where do they need to be? Is
Yeah.
10% margin, 50% margin, 30% margin? A lot of people pursue sales for the sake of sales. And what I just want to point out that you just said, and it's been true since KFC, from what I've heard today, is that it's not sales for the sake of sales. It's sales that bring you margins, and then ultimately at the end of the year bring you a profit. And
Yeah.
you obviously analyze in the past, because you say if your margins were not where they need to be, then you may need to make changes. So that's a key thing in this podcast that we'll be talking about is people understanding their books, understanding margins, understanding what margins have to be. And if I'm hearing you correctly, Antonio, you couldn't run your business without that knowledge. Is that right? I mean, how
Oh,
important is that?
oh my gosh, that is unbelievably important. I mean, this is one of the reasons why contracting businesses are one of the leading failed businesses in the United States, is that people don't understand that. You can't
Yeah,
just run the numbers. The numbers may look good on a cash flow basis, seeing money coming in, but if it's going out just as fast as it's going in, you are
right.
not going to make a profit. And if a business is not profitable, ultimately is going to have to close its doors.
Right.
So,
But I just
Absolutely.
want to make sure that didn't go by the wayside, because that's one of the critical elements of any successful business is understanding your numbers. Can't do it
Yeah.
without it.
So you've got a very successful business. It's 2020. You've learned a lot over the years. Like you said, we could spend hours and probably days talking about all the lessons that you've learned, and things that you've gotten right and things that you've gotten wrong. But I would like to just go through some areas somewhat quickly and kind of a concise way, and just show people all the different facets of your business that are successful and that you've had to work on. So we don't need to go super in depth, but just want to ask you some key business questions really quick. So, what's you've got a great tagline, but what's the vision for your company? What are you heading down now? Back then, you didn't know about pools. Now you guys are in pools. What is your vision now for Aquascape Pools?
I mean, really, our vision encompasses more than pools today. We want to really help people reconnect with the outdoors, and
Mm,
in a small way. And I'm not talking about reconnecting by going out to the mountains in Colorado. That would be the ultimate reconnection. But bring it to their yards. So whether it is with the pool, whether it is with a water garden, or just a fire pit, an outdoor kitchen, a sitting area, just any kind of a way that helps that particular client reconnect with nature, reconnect with the outdoors. That's what we're trying to be of assistance, and we want to be able to facilitate that. So again, I don't try to go up there and sell them something that doesn't fit their
hmm
personality. Some people are just not cut out for a pool. Some people are not cut out for a waterfall, even if they do want a pool. So instead of going in there with the vision of sales, 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 it's more of a what is it that is going to help you enjoy your outdoors? What's going to help you to enjoy your backyard? And then let's see if Aquascape can help you create that and facilitate the steps to get you to have that enjoyment of your backyard where you can create experiences and memories. So that's really our vision. It's just helping people reconnect, if you were to sum it up.
that's good. I like that because it can go into so many different facets. It doesn't limit you to the pools. It can also be pergolas. It can also be, gardens. It can, it's not just pool. It can be anything that helps them to reconnect with nature.
Yeah.
So who is your target market now, and why have you chosen that target market?
I mean, really, anybody with a backyard is my target market.
Right.
So I guess if
But
you
you're
live
not
with,
doing certain types of pools. Like you're only starting at a certain level, right?
well, we have said that, but I do need to clarify it. So at a certain level, when we say, we're doing unique outdoor designs, and we're trying to not do cookie cutter approach. Yes,
Right.
I definitely agree with that. However, a lot of people don't have the room to do something big. So
Sure.
we had in prior years developed a line to try to uh, target people that were going to spend a certain amount of money. And I think
Right.
we even went as far as putting a line on our website that said project starting at 75,000. We have since taken that down because we realized that we were leaving a segment of the population out of the equation. Somebody that buys in a zero lot line, they have a beautiful home, let's say 3,000, 4,000 square foot home, but their backyard is basically non-existent. And they want to still do something with that little backyard. They want to have a small little oasis, a small little sitting area. So it's not feasible for them to spend $75,000. It's just not
Sure.
going to work. I mean, unless I go in there and just go, it's totally crazy with their backyard. So, but they may spend $30,000 or $40,000. If I can make my 30% margin on that 30 or $40,000 project, it's all back to your question earlier. It's all the same, whether it's
Yeah.
a thousand
Principle's the
dollars or
same.
So we kind of changed directions a little bit within the last couple of years to
Yeah.
encompass and embrace the fact that everybody's backyard has the opportunity to have that added nature connection
Yeah.
and serve our goal, serve our mission. So
Well, I think what you said there that really sticks out is that you're really not going for the cookie cutter. You've set
yeah.
yourself apart with incredible designs where even if they do have that small lot, they're able to do something that's so unique, so custom.
Mhm.
And you really are targeting someone who is not looking for the cookie cutter, not someone who just wants a pool, but they want the best pool. I
Exactly.
mean, like I said earlier, go to the aquascapeokc.com. You'll see some of the coolest projects for pools you've ever seen, um, and no, there's nothing cookie cutter about it.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
sometimes the website itself kind of helps you narrow that field down to your client, because
absolutely.
I've had people that fill out our form uh, requesting a quote on our website. So we call them, and the first thing they say is, "Well, we love your pools. We like what we saw, but we don't want that. We want something cookie cutter." I mean, they'll basically say that to our staff.
Hmm.
So at that point, we have the opportunity to just weed that out, because we're going to go out there and waste our time on that lead,
Yeah.
because they're not going to buy what we offer. So at that time, we have the opportunity to say, thank you so much for reaching out. We may not be the best fit for you.
Yeah.
Our pools are not cookie cutter, as they themselves recognize it. So you wonder, why do they fill out the form? Because they themselves say, wow, this stuff is awesome, but we don't
But
want that.
that's not what I want. Yeah.
Well, I
That's
mean,
not what
that's
you
so
need.
crucial. So many contractors, I mean, one, customers aren't learning anything from their website, but two, you've got on there photos and examples of your work, and people know that's the kind of work that you do just by seeing your website. And two, you're generating leads from your website and getting quotes requested from your website, which is a huge deal. And then three, you're able to have conversations that are discovery conversations so that you don't have to go out in person, and you're able to do that because you've got the website, because you've got the pictures on there. And such a key thing, like, how valuable is your website to you today?
Oh my gosh, my website is immensely valuable. I mean, it's just, I mean, we've had it for a long, long, long time. And in the early years, it was one of those things that you could have done without. But as time has progressed, and the technology has evolved and everything's online these days, it is just an amazing tool to have. And the work that we do is so unique, it is hard to really promote that
Yeah.
in any other way. I mean, on the website, we have tons of pictures, we have videos, we have links to Facebook, we have links to our YouTube channel, we have links to House. So, the client can totally see exactly what we're about before they even make that phone call.
Yeah, before they even take a minute of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Super important for any contractors out there. So, what with the work that you do now? I mean, you guys have become very efficient. You're doing, dozens of pools a year and really high end custom homes, not just digging a hole in the ground, but you guys are building beautiful landscapes with the pools as well. And if you see the pictures, you'll know what we're talking about. What has been like the key to continuously improving and becoming so efficient?
Well, as far as improvement is concerned, is education. This year is going to be tough because of the coronavirus limits, but I go to seminars every year. I have been since 2007 when I went to my first pool seminar, and I haven't stopped since. Trade shows and continuing education is a key. Yes, there's a lot to be learned from experience and from just doing it, but if you just continue to only learn from yourself, you're going to limit that knowledge base to just what you are able to
Yeah.
create. And when you get outside of that box and you go and you visit with other contractors and you visit with other experts in the fields, then you're going to realize that there's a lot more to be learned. You learn from each other. They look at things that you did. You're able to be a help to someone else, and then you're gaining from the knowledge that they have and the experiences that they have had. So um, that's how we continue to get better, and that's how we continue to improve, is to again surround ourselves with other experts. And I like to say people that are smarter than me. I go to some pool guys that I think are way smarter than me, but then they think I'm smarter than them. So
Yeah.
it's just amazing. I built some great relationships over the years with some guys in California and in Texas and in Florida, and we just really bounce ideas off each other, and we find that we have a lot to learn from each other. So
Yeah. That's great. Well, man, what an incredible story, and we'll probably have to have you back on in the future to go through some other aspects of your business. But it's really great to hear all that from you. Thank you so much for sharing. We're gonna jump into some of our segments.
And let
Martin, are you
me,
ready?
yeah, let me just say something really quickly here. I think that what we've heard today is a story of a man and some principles and his trusting in God, um, uh, willing to do what was necessary, accepting the challenge of learning from everything you did. So while you're at KFC, you're learning about margins, learning about managing people, learning about dealing with the public. You've had the courage. I know that a lot of your courage comes from your faith in God, but it's still courage to do what you needed to do. You accepted challenges as learning opportunities. They didn't scare you off. And so I think the big story here is the kind of person that you are and how you've succeeded. And in the future, maybe we can do this again where we talk a little bit about the details of business, the details of marketing, how you came up with margins, how you run your company, how you delegate. So, more on the operational things that listeners might say, oh, I can do that. But this has just been a great story. And anyway,
Absolutely.
Antonio,
well,
yes, thank you. But yes, I'm ready.
No, I'm inspired for sure.
well, thank
And
you.
let's do that. Let's go into our Mount Rushmore segment. Let me see here.
You got to play the music.
There we go. I don't know if everybody could hear that or not, but um, Mount Rushmore has nothing to do with that sound. What do you feel like what were your top four things from this? What biggest takeaways, Martin?
Well, my Mount Rushmore things, one is going to be bookkeeping, because Antonio does. Well, anyway, it's bookkeeping. It's foundational to everything, and Antonio's done a great job of it since the get go. And when I first saw his books the first day I met you, I realized I'm seeing something that I don't see elsewhere. So, bookkeeping. I also want to talk about some kind of ephemeral things, but courage, a focus on others. Um, that that it's a servant's heart, but you're focusing on others. You said several times, I'm not out trying to sell somebody something. I'm just trying to find out what they want and provide it to them, which is the very definition of great sales. And then I think surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you. And I think you said it well. I'm not sure they're smarter than you, but they're different in the the sum of the parts is greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So those are my four: bookkeeping, courage, focus on others, and surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you.
Those are great. And mine are honestly pretty similar. So my big four things for this are just Antonio's faith, his connection to the church. There's no question that he wouldn't be where he is, that he wouldn't be where he is today without God and without that church family. And I know he would agree with that. Um, I think the learning mentality is so key. You mentioned that at the end, Antonio, that you're always looking to go to seminars, and that's really just a value that you have, and you have to have as a person in life in general, but as a contractor especially. There's just so much that you don't know, and you have to be willing to see every experience, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, as a learning opportunity. And you did that tremendously well. The next one is just knowing your customers. I know that you may not think about it like that, but it was really obvious from the get-go that you knew your customers, just on the basic level of, hey, these neighbors don't mow their lawn, maybe they need me, right? Or, man, they don't spend much time outside, that they need me, right? Just knowing your customers, even when, with taking the $75,000 off the website as where your project started, that was knowing your customers, knowing that, like, hey, not all of our customers have big lawns that can get to that budget, but they can still spend a lot of money on a small space.
Yeah.
I think you've known your customers from the get-go, and that's been so tremendous. And not enough contractors spend time with their customers and understanding their mentality. And then lastly, I'm going to put grit on there. I think that it takes a certain amount of courage, yes, but even just like, I know so many people that would be ashamed to take a job at KFC when the job offers weren't coming in, and you wanted to work, you wanted to do things. I know people that wouldn't dare put their hands on a lawnmower because it was beneath them. And you've only been able to get to where you are today because you had that grit, and you didn't care what was in front of you. You were gonna conquer it. And so those are my big four. I would say my George Washington out of all those, though, would definitely be faith and church, because you've gone through some really hard things, and I know that you wouldn't have been able to get through it without your faith. And I'm not speaking for you. I know you'd agree. Um,
Yeah.
so, Martin, what would be your George Washington out
No,
there?
they're all of them are important, but I'll just say focus on others.
Yeah,
If you concentrate on how you're serving others, uh, you'll wind up taking care of yourself as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Antonio, you had already given us a quote of the day: "Surround yourself with people that are better than you." I think that's really great, and you're a testament to that. But I think we all need to do that. We all got to surround ourselves with people that we can learn from, people that we can also teach, um, and we can learn through that teaching. But we've got to surround ourselves with people that are better than us.
Yeah.
Um, we do
Well,
this.
and
This.
adding,
Oh, go ahead.
adding to that, if there was a C, another A, B, and C, I would put on there. Learn from your mistakes. You use them for building yourself and becoming better for the next time. So a mistake is an opportunity to get better. And oftentimes, people don't take criticism. They get defensive. They are either ashamed of a mistake, or they are wanting to pass the buck and blame it on somebody else. But really, a mistake is an opportunity to get better. And so just embrace it.
That's
And
great.
that's great.
So, um, we always like to leave Antonio with something that people can go and do, something that they can actually, like, go and do. And you talked to us yesterday about what you would recommend about, you know, for you, it would be connecting with nature, but just understanding your customer. Tell us more about that.
Um, Something to actually go and do.
Yeah, yesterday you had said, for you said connecting with nature is so key, because if not, you don't understand what kind of outdoor experience your customer wants, because
Yeah.
you can't see yourself in their shoes, and that's a
So
really important thing.
yeah. So yeah, and again, I said it in regards to the particular business that I'm in. I mean, just the experiences that you see from being outdoors and just getting out a sense of understanding and taking in your surroundings. So even if you're not out in the woods, I mean, just going to a park, a city park, and just taking in the aroma of the air and listening to the birds and listening to the wind as it hits the trees and it moves the leaves. I mean, just that connection just brings a relaxation to your soul. And we that's what we want to try to create. So sometimes just as simple as planting a couple of trees in somebody's backyard is just an enough. It's a first step, just of creating that nature
Yeah.
feel and that connection. So
Yeah, and I think for other contractors that may not be outdoors, go and find areas that your customers go and live their life for a little bit. Go and be in their shoes, put yourself in their experience, um, because it's not about you; it's about them. Listen to them and know what they want by experiencing what they're experiencing, is what I get from that.
yeah.
Uh,
And one thing, like I remember this years and years ago. My daughter was little, and we went to the zoo. And what do you go to the zoo to do? I think mostly is to look at animals, right? That's what you would agree. or,
yeah,
but my daughter made a comment to me. It's like, Dad, you spend more time looking at the plants and the trees than you have looking at the animals. So again, I was embracing the surroundings and I was embracing nature and I was learning because then I can take that experience and apply it to somebody's yard.
yeah.
And that's I remember my daughter pointed that out to me. So
No, that's good. That's good. Okay, so before we wrap up here, we've got Ethan ready for his insights, and he's got a lot to cover
Yep.
in this almost 2 hour episode. So,
Ethan the
what?
intern.
Yeah, you ready, Ethan?
I am ready.
Okay. Well, let's get your music going. We're gonna give you 90 seconds again, um,
Oof.
and
I might be quicker than that.
oh, you think so?
I might be.
Okay. Well, let me get the timer going here. Music is going. All right, go for it.
All right. So sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do, but in turn, it can push you to do something you actually want to do. Like Antonio turned his hobby into his career after working at KFC. Um, Build relationships with your customers, even outside of what they need. It can help you discover their actual problems. Prove the price of your service by delivering quality. Antonio realized or utilized his relationships from KFC to find employees at the start, but quickly realized he needed to find more reliable customers or employees. So he found a right hand man and he hired one of his longtime friends. Having trusted employees can be a blessing in hard times. Antonio took risk when he started building pools, but that's what you have to do sometimes. Sometimes you have to take risk. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. When you make a mistake, you own up to it and learn from it. And the principle of margins doesn't change as prices go up. Know your margins and stick to it, and understand your books. If you understand your books, you can make more valuable decisions, take on better jobs, deny jobs, and just grow your company better. Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Martin, did you leave anything out?
I don't think so. I think it was pretty good. So
I think
It was pretty good.
Congratulations.
Antonio, did you leave anything out?
oh, I'm sure we left tons out. I'm
I
just kidding.
stumbled on one. It was
We
about hiring employees. At first, you hired quick just to fill a spot, but then
yeah,
you realized you needed better employees. So that was where I
absolutely,
stumbled
absolutely.
in there.
Yeah.
It's
No,
good.
no, no. This is really good. I think that you summed it up quite nicely.
Cool.
Okay.
So,
Sweet.
Well, good.
and you
Well, I
did it
would
under
like
30 seconds.
in the distant future, so that you have time to recover, but where we talk about some of the particulars that you've done, the details that contractors who are listening and want to emulate your success, uh, particular things that they can do. So if
Yeah.
you're open to coming back in the future. we would appreciate it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I might next time be smarter with the whole internet thing and be better prepared. So, and
No worries.
let's
Well,
not get stuck.
your idea of surrounding yourself with somebody smarter than you, that's what Khalil does for me. I don't know how to do any of this. He
Well, if
mentioned
you
that
can,
he's a millennial.
well,
Khalil
Khalil,
said
if you
he's a
can figure out
millennial.
to get me better internet to Arcadia, Oklahoma, I am all ears.
Yeah. We'll
He's
get
got to have
OEC out there.
Elon Musk send up a satellite for you so you can
Oh,
beam it
goodness.
right in. So
Goodness. Well, hey, Antonio, thanks for your time today. We know it's hard to make 2 hours to record a
Yeah.
podcast, but we know your story is going to be an impact to so many people. Listeners can connect with you through your website, right?
Yes.
Aquascapeopc.com. And yeah, there'll be a lot of resources in the show notes as well. So appreciate it. Thank you, Cash Flow Contractors. And yeah, Antonio, we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
thanks,
Appreciate
Antonio.
it. See you.
Thanks for listening to The Cash Flow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.